Hello, hello. Welcome to the second episode in the single podcast series, singleness podcast series. Um, this is August 2024, and we are, doing the theme of singleness this month. So I am coming to you guys from our Airbnb in LA. We've been here a couple weeks, so ignore the boring background and not great camera if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening audio, you're not even going to notice a difference. So, okay. Last week's episode, I've already gotten a lot of feedback from you guys that you liked, and even a lot of people who aren't single said they were encouraged by the biblical truth in it. This week's is going to be a little different. This week is going to be more practical and a little less spiritual, though it ends with the ultimate spiritual truth of all. So in this episode, I really want to talk to my single friends out there who are dating and maybe have dated a lot or have some bad dating habits or are like a little bit addicted to apps or to my single dating friends. That's what this week's episode is. And I'm going to give you guys some pretty direct and tough stuff. In fact, I think when I was single, I didn't want to hear any of this stuff. And my single friends and I, when we would sit around and talk to each other, never really told each other this stuff because it's hard to hear. And so, this episode's going to be a little hard hitting, but also freedom. And then I'm going to end with ultimate truth. Like, it's always going to be healing, soul level biblical truth. But next week's episode is going to be for the people out there listening who are actually dating like the one. Maybe you're engaged or you're about to get engaged, or you think this guy is like the guy, because that's a whole different thing. When I actually did meet my now husband, we only dated, and like from dating to marriage was only 10 months for us, but the 10 months was very different than pretty much all the other dating that I had done. It felt different. It felt more real. It brought up it was just a brand new experience from all the other dating that I had been doing. And so I need to separate these two episodes. Okay. That one next week, for those of you, is going to be so good. Like, I never heard anything like the stuff I'm going to be telling you guys next week if you're one of those women. And I have a lot of you right now who are in that phase where you're like, pretty sure this is the guy, pretty sure we're about to get engaged. Like, whoa. And then, like, whoa, that does crazy things to the heart, soul, mind, life. It's a very short season, but it's a crazy season to transition from basically fantasy to reality. Okay. That's what next week's episode is going to be about, is that weird space and time where we as women have to make that transition from I've dreamed about this, but now it's real. And just like there's so much to unpack there. This episode, though, is for my girls out there who are dating guys who probably you shouldn't be dating, or you've been dating too long, or you're making a lot of excuses for, or you kind of do a whole bunch of texting and attention getting, and like you're kind of stuck in that phase. Okay. If you're over there in that phase, listen up. So asked my husband last night, and so last night I told my husband what this episode was going to be about, and I said, I want your opinion as a guy. I want your opinion. And here's the background on him and the question I asked him, and then I'm just going to give you guys a lot of what he said, really, but my heart agreed with and knew was true from my own experience. Okay. So first of all, my husband got saved when he was like 35, and it changed him radically. And before, he was like always a good guy, quote unquote, but he will admit that like before he was saved, he dated like a lot of nice or like good guys, but he had a bit of a selfish and different mindset. And so I dug into that mindset a little bit. And then he distinctly knows what it felt like and what it feels like to be filled with the Holy Spirit and to understand the purpose of dating and the purpose of marriage and how to, like, that he was called to love a woman like Christ loves the church, as opposed to like, what can this woman do for me, which was kind of the old mindset. So he said like a really reliable source. I just want you guys to know that he's a reliable source. And so what I said to him last night was, what would you tell a girl who is maybe dating a guy or dating him on and off, or he won't commit, or he's texting a lot, but then he ghosts, or just like, she's not like, what would you tell a girl who feels like he's kind of maybe got commitment issues, or he's like messing around with her from a dude's perspective? What is going on there? Because this happened a lot to me when I was single. I mean, it happened a lot to me that guys would come on strong, they would ghost, they would fizzle, or yeah, I just like, this happened a lot. So I said, like, what is going on there? And he said, well, first of all, and this is my first point to you guys, I have three points, and then I'm going to end with the biblical spiritual truth. But he said, well, first of all, commitment. I wrote it down word for word. This is a direct quote because it was so good I laughed out loud. He said, commitment issues must be a term that women made up because that's not a thing. Okay, so I know that's hard to hear. I'm not sure what I'm going to title this episode yet, but I probably could title it something like a bunch of things you probably don't want to hear but need to hear, or he's just not into you, and a bunch of other things that other girls won't tell you, because this is a guy really now telling you, kind of through me. So I kind of laughed and I was like, but really, like, commitment issues aren't a thing. And he was like, no. Now he's a pretty like bold and straightforward guy. So the next sentence that he said, we're gonna take somewhat lightly, but what he said was, no, if he's not pursuing you actively, consistently, if he's not working towards like marrying you, you're not the girl of his dreams, and he's waiting for somebody better to come along. That's literally what he said. And I was like, okay, well, that's harsh to hear. And he was like, yeah, I mean, it is harsh to hear, but also like it is, like, it is what it is. I don't know if any of you guys have ever read the book He's Just Not That Into You. It was a book, it was a movie, it's probably 20 years old now, but basically the author of that book makes the same argument. He's like, if a guy is making any excuses at all, if he's making any excuses at all about why he's not texting you and why he's not calling you and why he's not introducing you to his family and all those types of things, he frankly like doesn't want to marry you. You're not the girl of his, you're not the girl. Now that is what it is. I don't need to sit here and like make you feel better about that. You need to accept that. You need to accept that. When I was dating, and I had a couple or two different relationships that went on way too long, 2 to 3 years of like on again, off again, him saying really kind of over the top flowery romantic things, but then not following through, and me thinking he just was like wounded, or he had commitment issues, or he just isn't ready. Like, I look back on it, I wasn't naive, but I did believe that I believed the best in people. I didn't believe that guys would actually date a girl just to kind of fill their time or their space. And I think that's similar with a lot of my audience. If you were raised in a Christian home by like pretty good men, or you have good examples of men in your life, and you didn't actually see men who used women as like a commodity, then it doesn't really cross your mind that guys could be that like cold. I said that to Jeff last night, my husband. I said, it still to this day shocks me that guys do that. And he was like, oh, 100%, 100%. Like, they don't want to be alone, but they like, So if there's some girl that's kind of sort of on the hook, like he knows he can text her and hang out with her on Friday night, he's going to, because it feels, he literally used the word power trip. He was like, it's a bit of a power trip to know that you can be a bit of a jerk all week and then she'll respond to your text right away. And I was like, I had these suspicions about men when I was dating, but I was like, there's no way men are like that selfish or like that cruel. And he was like, yeah, they are. They really are. And, again, this is coming from a guy who he didn't like use and mistreat women, but he knew, like his friends did, or he knew that was a possibility. And this was before he got saved, obviously. And after getting saved, like totally different. But I guess I just wanted to remind all of you out there today that like, a lot of us have good hearts and we expect men to have good hearts. And a lot of men don't. Like they literally don't. They literally were taught to, or think it's okay to use women for attention or for like physical stuff if you're going down that road, which obviously don't. I mean, don't. But if you have, or if you do, like he's gonna stick around, in the words of my husband, until he finds something better. Now, again, I know when I say things like that, it can feel like, why am I not good enough? Why am I not enough for this guy? But then my husband was just saying so many things last night that were like, I was like, I need to be recording this whole conversation, or I need to just get you on the podcast, because the truth bombs you're dropping are like, girls never say this stuff to each other. Girls never admit this stuff to themselves. Okay. So I was kind of pushing on that. I was like, but you do realize I can't really say that. I mean, like, it's hurtful to tell women. He's just literally using you until something better comes along. And then Jeff was like, no, it's not that hurtful. I mean, the guy's a jerk. You don't like him as much as you think you do right now. And I was like, whoa, what? Back that truck up and say that again. And he said, if girls would just be more honest with themselves, like, the guy's a jerk. You don't like him as much as you think you do right now. You don't. And that really resonated with me, And even, back in the days when I was dating, I was like, that's absolutely true. Like all these guys who kind of ghosted me or strung me along or would say one thing, or even like really powerful emotional things, or even like be kind of nice to me, but then they were hot and cold and back and forth and all the things. Like it always turned out that he wasn't as good of a guy as I thought he was. He wasn't as manly as I thought he was. He wasn't as godly as I thought he was. He's kind of a loser. And I put up with it for way too long. So who cares if he's just not that into you? If he's willing to use you until something better comes along, if he's willing to string you along, he's not that good of a guy. And you don't actually like him as much as you think you do. So yeah, I mean, I see you, my single friends on the apps, dating all the guys, texting all the guys. Like I was you. I feel your pain, and I know how good the attention feels. And I know like how powerful initial attraction can be and all those things. But I guess I wanted to remind you to stop making excuses for bad behavior and to admit the fact that you aren't the girl for everybody. You're not. So, initial meetings, and then he like changes his mind. So what? So be it. Like, those are the moments when you have to get to, I'm going to say, the opportunity to do deeper, harder work about your self-confidence and what you have to offer. I mean, being single and dating either creates a very needy, insecure person, or it can create an incredibly confident person, because you have a choice when the guy ghosts, or the guy is a jerk, or whatever, or the guy breaks up with you, or doesn't want to marry you. Like, you have a choice in that moment to take that personally and believe that that random dude has the power to speak your worth and identity over you, which he doesn't, or you have the opportunity to turn to God and repeatedly let your Heavenly Father speak your worth and your identity over you, which he will do, by the way. If you get alone with him, he will remind you of what a catch you are. He will remind you that the right guy will see you for who you really are. He will remind you, right? Like, God will do this. So, yeah, I mean, in the words of my husband, if he's dragging you on for like a long time, um, over a year without setting some, because I asked him for the timeline. I was like, what's the timeline of a guy who, how do you know if he's, like yanking you around, whatever the term is. And he said, yeah, probably about a year. Like, if at a year he hasn't given you a timeline or a plan, then he's probably not serious, or he's changed his mind. And, that is what it is. That is what it is. And then I asked him, I said, okay, so what if he gives you a timeline? And he's like, yeah, I would like to be maybe, because guys used to do this for me a lot in a way to keep me around, but not actually commit to me. They would say things like, well, after this year at this job, or, after just whatever, they would make up some timeline of like, well, then I'll be free to take you home to meet my parents, or then I'll be free. And so they keep you on the hook a little longer, right? With whatever their promises are. And he said, if a guy sets any kind of timeline like that, after this, then this, he said, believe it one time. He said, one time. If he says it, I'm gonna take you to meet my parents after the holidays, and then he doesn't come through, break up with him. If he says, I would like to be engaged by 2025, and then he doesn't do it, break up with him. So, because, we do have to believe people until they prove us otherwise, right? So believe this person until they prove to you that they are just keeping you around because it feels better to have, a boyfriend or girlfriend than to not. It feels better and easier in life, on your ego, on your bored Friday nights, to have somebody around than to not have somebody around. So stop letting the guys use you. I mean, once I figured this out, and I did figure it out, I was very quick to recognize that to some guys, it was just like a power trip or an ego stroke to date me, but they had no intentions of marrying me. And in case it isn't obvious, the quickest, best way you can figure out the guy's intentions is like to not, be sleeping with him. Obviously, this is Christian podcast. You guys know my own story. I didn't have sex until I was married. God still, God's ways are still best, and the Bible does say that. So if you are not sleeping with the guy, it is a much quicker way to figure out how serious he is or not. Because if you're not engaging in that activity with him, he will, and he's not serious about you, he will fizzle out quickly. Like, the relationship will fizzle quickly. But if he likes you, your soul, your spirit, your mind, if he's attracted to you, if he thinks you're a good catch, and he loves the Lord, and you guys aren't sleeping together, it will move the process along at the pace, at the speed in which it naturally should go, so that there's not a lot of stress and anxiety and worry about, like, why is this taking so long? So, yeah, okay. The next thing I wanted to tell you guys is, I mean, I know all of those things that I just said are hard to hear, but now I'm going to give you one more thing that's hard to hear. So there's that type of guy, right? And we have to be honest with ourselves that out there is that type of guy. He may even be introduced to you by friends. He may have met somebody you met at church. He may say all the right things, but you have to acknowledge in your heart that some men will keep women around until, quote unquote, something better comes along. And you do not want to be that woman, okay, who's being kept around until something better comes along. Don't be that girl. Don't be the ego stroke. Don't be the girl who lets him treat you poorly all week, or treat you poorly all week. And then, yeah, I'll hang out with you tonight. And no. Like, do not be that girl. If you want coaching in this area, if you want like somebody to help you figure out how to break this pattern, if you want to build confidence, if you want to stop being that girl, hit me up for coaching. I will coach you through how to treat yourself better, how to treat yourself like a high value woman, and ultimately then how to attract that kind of guy, right? Okay, this next point is something that my husband also said, and it's kind of for a different type of woman. So we've got that woman who's really letting guys drag you on and taking it personal. He's the jerk, but you're wondering why he doesn't like you or why he's not committing to you. Like, that's a whole mind issue, confusing thing on your own. But call me in coaching, we'll figure that out. This is more for the woman who already is like, no, I don't tolerate bad behavior. Like, I'm a solid Christian girl. I know who I am. I've got self-worth. I'm like waiting for a Christian guy. And so you go on dates occasionally with good Christian guys. It could be once a year, but you meet them on an app, or somebody like introduces you, friends introduce you or whatever, and they're like, this really good Christian guy. And they tell the guy, it's this really sweet, like godly Christian girl. And so you actually do occasionally meet a guy who like could be, who's like a good guy. He's not the kind of guy who's going to ghost you or use you or hold, like, he's marriage minded. First of all, there's the whole issue of like, do you actually like him? Is there attraction? I mean, there's so many X factors that have to fit together for for two people to want to spend their entire life together and make this commitment before God and family. Like, there's so many pieces that have to fit together. But so another thing that my husband said yesterday is, and this is also something many of you probably don't want to hear. He said, I have noticed that there's a lot of like sweet, kind, beautiful, single 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever Christian women who say they want a leader and a like a good Christian man, but they're really not willing to be led. And I said, okay, expand on that. Like, what's happening? And he said, well, I see them, I hear them. So this could be like at church or in small group or just whatever dynamics that he witnesses these things in. But he said, I see them being real, like pretty overbearing. And even if it's the smallest ways, they like correct him a lot, or they act like they know everything, or they try to almost like parent him or coach him, or even like draw out the best in him. But there's a vibe from modern day women. And I did it a little bit at the beginning of our relationship, me and Jeff, but Jeff didn't let me get away with it for very long. But there's a vibe of like, I'm smarter than you. Now, if you have thought about the guy, if you've met a good Christian guy and you treat him like you are smarter than him, he will not call you back. Two things could be going on there. If you actually don't respect the guy, you know, if you're like, no, we're genuinely like, I'm glad you love the Lord, but we're not on the same level. I don't feel equal with you, whether that's intellectually or humor or maybe even career wise. I don't really feel like we're like equally yoked. Cut him loose, let him go. Don't try to change him. Don't try to coach him. Don't try to make him a better man. That's not cool. That's not kind. Okay. It's not. It's really, really not. If you've met a man who you do feel like you're pretty equally yoked in a lot of ways, same level, like he would be a good find or catch, or I would feel kind of like I would feel honored, you know, to be married to him, to introduce him to my people, and he feels that way about you. You know, really, you could be doing something wrong if you don't let that man lead, if you don't let him be a man, if you don't let him be different. There was one moment when Jeff and I were dating, that we had had a basically social interaction. I don't even remember what it was, but I thought that he should have like been more talkative or asked more questions. I don't remember. Handled it a certain way. And we were driving home and I was like kind of quiet and awkward and stuff, and because it was like bothering me. And he said, like, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of thought like maybe like you could like ask more questions or like tried a little harder with those people or something. I don't remember how I said it. And he was quiet for a second and then he goes, you're not going to be able to perfect me. You know that, right? And I was like, dang. So like in that moment, I did realize like to love somebody means to take them as they are. Doesn't mean we can't, when we're married, like speak our mind about real things. It doesn't mean we don't keep growing. It doesn't mean any of that. I'm just saying it's not fair to date somebody and think that you're always right, or think that they have to act just like you, or think that they have to think like you, or think, I mean, to love another human being is to love somebody who is different. You need to respect them. You need to be overall proud of who they are. You need to feel, generally like really good to be dating them, and happy to bring them in public and happy to be their girl and all those things. But the nuances of like, maybe he tells jokes a little differently than me, or maybe he is more introverted than me, or maybe he handles stress a little differently than me. There comes a moment, women, where you have to let the dude be himself. So yeah, I mean, this is another point that's hard to hear. But in essence, the point is you have to be willing to be led. Stop being overbearing and acting like you know everything. Like those are the words. Those are the words that are hard to hear. Now, luckily, my husband, Jeff, is a strong personality. I'm a very strong personality, but he's like one click stronger than me. And so, and this is how I know that it was like he's the guy that God has for me, right? This was God's plan. Because when I was acting like that toward him, it didn't scare him off, but he called it out in me instead of just trying to change and be exactly what Rebecca wanted and then get resentful or lose attraction in Rebecca, because that's what would happen with a guy who's maybe a little more of a people pleaser or a little bit of a more of a peacemaker personality. Those types of guys, if you're a strong woman, like they will just not call you back. They will just lose attraction in you. So I just really want to encourage my strong Christian friends out there to decide pretty quickly with a guy. I mean, I think within the first 3 to 6 months, can I let this guy lead me, or am I going to try to control him and change him? If you're going to try to control him and change him because ultimately, like, you don't actually respect him, you're not actually proud to be with him, you need to break up with him. If you do ultimately respect him, you are ultimately proud to be with him, you have to learn how to back off. You have to learn how to keep your mouth shut. You're not right all the time, okay? He doesn't have to do everything your way. Now, let me start to wrap this one up. Ultimately, I wanted to do this episode to just help my friends out there who are wasting time, to stop wasting time, who might accidentally be pushing good guys away. Kind of think about the fact that you either need to break up with him or you need to let him lead and stop being so take chargey. But also I just really wanted to say, like, I deeply understand. Okay, 39. I was 39 when I got married. More than anybody in the world, I understand boredom, isolation, the loneliness, the sadness, the anger, the self-doubt that can come in waves as a single woman. And what I also know, that having quick attention, so that means getting it from the apps or getting it from maybe going out with your girlfriends, I don't know, but like attention is at our fingertips nowadays. And it's like a drug. Okay, friends, the attention is like a drug to numb out all of those difficult emotions that I just named. You're lonely, you're sad, you're bored, you're hurting. Some parts of you feel very unfulfilled or very unsatisfied. You have burning desire that's still not met, whatever. The overwhelming onslaught of emotions can be numbed out immediately by texting that guy, that loser, that jerk. They can be numbed out immediately by finding a new guy, okay? Or by revisiting the guy that you've been on and off with for 2 or 3 years. Stop doing this to yourselves. Stop doing this to yourselves. It is better to be stone cold single, like stone cold single, than to be basically ingesting all this junk that is so bad for our souls. It's so bad for our relationship with God. It's so bad for our confidence. It's so bad for our mental and emotional health. Okay. It's a little bit like if you maybe you're like really conscious of what you eat and exercise and things like that. Okay. And you've got a friend who wants to feel better and look better, right? She wants to be healthier. She wants to maybe lose some weight. She wants to be fit. She wants to get rid of her gut issues, but she keeps eating the worst food in the world. She keeps not exercising. She keeps not drinking water, whatever it is that she keeps doing. She's got all these terrible habits, and yet she's really upset about the fact that she wants to be healthy and fit and feel good, but she's got all these terrible habits. It's like, I'm sorry, but I don't see how you're going to make the jump from ingesting and all these terrible stuff and acting in these ways to what you say you want over here. Like, I don't see how you're going to make that jump. It's the same thing with a lot of the apps nowadays, or a lot of the dating habits, a lot of the texting, a lot of the hookup or makeout culture or whatever it is that we live in. If you're saying out of one side of your mouth, I want a mature man, a grown man, a godly man. I want the kind of man who is looking for someone to get married to, who's not going to waste a woman's time, who's not going to basically be that man that I described at the beginning of this episode, right? The man who's like, I just kind of use women. I can be really charming. I can be really, entertaining. I'll take him on sweet dates. I'll say sweet things, but in his heart of hearts, he's the kind of man that's just looking to, like, what can a woman do for me? If you say that you don't want that kind of man, you have to stop with all the habits and ingesting all the crap that is producing those kind of relationships and wasting your precious time and hurting your confidence and taking you away from God, okay? Because, friends, here's the truth bomb, okay? Honestly, my husband gave me so many truth bombs the other day. I was like, how did you even, where did you come from? Here's the truth bomb, okay? So I said to him, I was like, okay, but I went through all this myself. Okay, the shot to the ego of like, you're just not the one, he's not that into you. Okay, but he's actually a jerk. Okay, so then I'm just supposed to wait for a good Christian man, but there's no good Christian man out there. What is a girl to do? And I said this last night to Jeff. So we'd had this conversation about all this from point A to point Z. And I was like, okay, but then put yourself in like the woman. She'd be her 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Okay. Single forever, single after a divorce, single after maybe being widowed even. Put yourself in the position of these girls that I'm talking to, these women that I'm talking to. And I'm basically telling them, like, don't play around with jerks. Don't waste your time. Don't let guys mistreat you. Only wait for the good Christian man. But there aren't really very many good Christian men to go around. And she's lonely. And there's a lot of time passing. There's a lot of sadness. There's put yourself, what is she really supposed to do? What are we really supposed to do? And he said, I wrote it down word for word. You have to stop thinking that you have to find the guy and put it in God's hands to find him. Mic drop. You have to stop thinking that you have to find the guy and put it in God's hands to find him. You know that's the truth, ladies. You know that's the truth. The hard part of that truth is, okay, but it's been years for some of you. I've done that, and I maybe take back control, and then I do it again. I've been through cycles over years, maybe even decades for some of you. But it doesn't change. It doesn't change the fact of the matter that we, if we're going to be healthy, happy women, have to believe that God either has a plan for our life that is a good plan, or we don't. We either believe that he has a guy for us that will come along in the right time. It might be in our late 20s, it might be in our late 30s, it might be in our 40s, it might be when we're 60. Okay. I know some of you are like, no, that's unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. Okay, then are you going to take the reins? And if you are going to take the reins, are you going to regret that later in your life? Yes, you are going to regret that later in your life. So for your health, for your relationship with God, for your confidence, and for your good, you have to stop thinking that you have to find the guy and believe that God will find him. That doesn't mean that we don't try. It doesn't mean that we don't, go to the church Bible study from time to time, or if somebody sets us up on a date, we go. What it means is that your heart believes that God is in control of this situation and that he sees you and that he has the power, the will, the desire to bring a godly man into your life, that that's still possible. You have to believe that, or else you're going to make all these compromises and you're going to take back all this control and you're going to be all confused and feel bad about yourself when the jerk ghosts you, who's actually a jerk, who you don't actually like as much as you think you do. Enough with all the drama. Live the life that God has in front of you and enjoy it. Demand really from God that he show you, kind of like I said in my, in the first episode. So the previous episode, what is the land you have for me? Okay, I'm going to believe you. But then show me what is good now. I don't think I have to just suffer in a barren land until you bring the guy along. No, you don't. He has something for you. Will you open yourself up to whatever that thing is and trust that it's not your job to hook the guy? Okay? How deep is your trust going to go? How much do you think God actually sees you? Do you think God actually cares? Do you think God is actually capable or not? Again, when I was single, I went through whole seasons where I believed and seasons where I took control. And every season that I took control, only bad stuff happened. Only bad stuff happened. Okay. Big episode. Hard to hear, but also like, aren't you glad somebody said it? Go be free, girl. Go be free. Go be free. And stop talking to those guys who are literally using you as a placeholder. You're not a placeholder. You're not. You are not a placeholder. So stop acting like one. Stop acting like one. You don't like him as much as you think you do right now. Okay, see you next week.